So slope is a really big concept in algebra, and we use it even throughout calculus and such. So you want to understand slope. Now, slope is telling us how steep a line is. We could have a really steep line, or we could have a really shallow line. It all just depends on the slope. We can also have negative slopes that go down. So to find the slope, what you first have to do is you need 2 points to find the slope. And slope is rise over run. It's a fraction. So you always need to find two things. You need to find the rise and you need to find the run. Now we need 2 points. So you just pick 2 points on a line. So if you're given a graph and have to find the slope, just find 2 points on that line. Pick which point you're going to start with and start counting up and over, because rise means up or down. It doesn't mean actually only up. It could mean down. So you rise first. So I'm going to start with this point right here, and I'm going to go up however much it told me to go up. Let's say it went up 3. And then run means how far over did you go? And I'm going to go to the right, which means it's positive. Whenever you go to the right, it's positive. And let's say it went 4. So then the slope here, the rise would have been 3 and the run would have been 4, rise over run. Now if I went the other direction, let's say I started with this point right here, I would have gone down 3, which means that number would have been a negative 3. And then from there I would have gone to the left 4, which is a negative 4, so going to the left is negative. So then my slope would have been a negative 3 over a negative 4, and if you remember, 2 negatives cancel to be positive, so I still get 3/4. So both answers is 3/4, no matter which way I went. You just have to make sure that when you go up is positive, when you go down is negative. When you go to the right, it's positive. When you go to the left, it's negative. So what if you don't have a graph? What if you're just given 2 points and you're told these 2 points are on a line? What is the slope of that line? Now you could go and graph it, but I'm telling you, you're wasting your time. There's 2 ways we can do this. We could do the subtraction fraction. And the subtraction fraction says when you rise, you're changing the y value. So on the top, you're going to be subtracting the y values. And then when you run, you're changing the x values. So on bottom, you're going to subtract the x values. Now this is fine, and this is the way a lot of people do it, and we'll do it this way just so you can see it. But what I don't like about this is sometimes people switch which x and which y they did. See, typically they say take the second y minus the first y, and take the second x minus the first x. So if I look at this as being 0.1 and this as being 0.2, I'm going to take the second y, that's a 3, minus the first y, that's a 5, over the second x, which is a 2, minus the first x, which is a 4. Now, the reason I don't like this is because there's a lot of places you can get mixed up. You could accidentally do the second y on the first top, but then down here you did the first x, which is going to mess up your signs. So you might end up with a positive instead of a negative. The other thing I don't like about it is a lot of times people forget which one's x and which one's y, and so they end up putting the wrong numbers in the place. And that really will mess up your answer. So, but you can do it this way as long as you keep yourself organized. So then I keep on going, and I take 3 minus 5, I get negative 2. 2 minus 4, I get negative 2. And if I simplify that, I get 1. So my slope is just 1, or 1 over 1 if you want to keep it in a fraction. The way I like to teach this, the way I like to do this is make a table. And I do this myself. If I have to find the slope of something, I actually do make a table. And I'm going to take this point, I'm going to put it exactly as is right here. So notice the 4 is on the left, the 5 is on the right. So I'm going to go 4 on the left, 5 on the right, because this is x and this is y. This is x and this is y. So they're across from each other still. It's almost as if I take this and I pick it up and I put it down and put it right there, as is 4 across from 5. And I do the same thing with the next point. So I'm going to take the 2 across from the 3. So again, it's as if I picked it up and I put it down exactly right there. And now what I'm going to do is what I lovingly call loop-d's. I'm going to take and I'm going to say, how do I get from 5 to 3? Like, what kind of math do you have to do? And to get from 5 to 3, you have to subtract 2. And then over here, to get from 4 to 2, I also have to subtract 2. And remember, on the top is the y value, on the bottom is the x value. So on the top, I put the y value, on the bottom, I put the x value. Rise is the y value, run is the x value. So I make a fraction, negative 2 over negative 2, and if I reduce that, I get a positive 1. So my slope is 1. No matter which way you do this, your slope is 1. It's just a matter of what are you most comfortable with. So on this next one, if I do my table, I'm going to do the table first. If I do the table first, I get my first one is 1, 5 across from each other. And then my next point is 5, 2 across from each other. And now as I do my loop-de, how do I go from 5 to 2? I subtract 3. How do I go from 1 to 5? I add 4. And now remember it's y over x, rise over run, y over x. So I have negative 3 over a positive 4, and that's my slope, rise over run. If I did my subtraction fraction, I have x and y, I take my second x value minus my second y value minus my first y value over my second x value minus my first x value. 2 minus 5 is negative 3. 5 minus 1 is 4, and there's my slope. So either way, you should get negative 3/4. Now, as we go on here, it might be a good idea to hit pause and try this yourself before I do it, just to make sure that you can do this if you're watching this to learn it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to do the table. Okay, so I set it up and I get negative 1 and a 2. I get 3 and a 2. Okay, so now as I go 2, how do I get from 2 to 2? I do nothing, I add 0. And how do I get from negative 1 to 3? I add 4. Think of the number line there. If you look at the number line, you got negative 1, then we've got 0, 1, 2, 3. So we have to add 4 to get there. And then my slope is going to be my y value over my x value, and 0 divided by 4 is 0. So my slope is 0. If you think about that, a slope of 0 means it's going straight across. It has no rise or run. It has no rise. Okay, so it's a horizontal line. Now, if you did the subtraction fraction, you're going to take the second y value minus the first y value over the second x value minus the first x value. And here's another place where people get mistake. We have a minus plus we have a negative. So we have two minuses in there, which means this is going to end up being a plus. So we get 0 over 4, just like we did on the other one. And our last one, if we set up a table here, we have negative 2 and 2. We have 3 and 4. Again, they're across from each other. To get from 2 to 4, I have to add 2. To get from negative 2 to 3, I have to add 5. So my slope is my y loop-de over my x loop-de, and I get 2 over 5. I'm not going to do subtraction fraction here. I'll just leave it as the table. And that's how you find slope.